The celebration continued across the Draveri fleet. Ships flashed with lights, and victory chants echoed through the communication channels. Admiral Shekhar had even ordered a massive replay of the outpost's destruction, broadcast on every major screen in the command decks. To the Draveri, it was a moment of glory. They believed they had crushed the human threat. But far from the party, in the deep analysis chamber of the fire color, Commander Relan stared at a blinking red dot on a dark screen. His sharp eyes focused on the small piece of data no one else had noticed, a single energy spike that didn't match the outpost's core systems. It had occurred seconds before the final explosion. "Replay the telemetry from the outpost, just before we fired," he said. A technician tapped quickly. The screen showed the station again. Broken, weak, silent. But just as the torpedoes closed in, a small shape shot out from the side. It moved fast, almost too fast for scanners to track. The technician paused the frame and zoomed in. "A pod," the technician whispered. Relan leaned in. The pod was tiny, nearly invisible to radar. It had no weapons, no engine trail, just enough to carry a single passenger. "It got away," Relan said. "They never told us." "Why would the humans launch a single pod?" the technician asked. Relan answered without looking away. "Because it wasn't a soldier. It was a scout." The mood shifted in the room. Everyone had heard the stories about Earth's recon soldiers. Quiet, patient, dangerous. They weren't the first to attack. They were the first to watch, to learn, and when the time came, to strike with terrifying precision. Relan stood tall. "Track the pod." It couldn't have gone far. Meanwhile, on the jungle-covered moon of Saros III, the pod had already landed. It slid quietly through the upper atmosphere and touched down between two tall cliffs. No lights, no signals. It buried itself under a thick patch of vines and disappeared from all scanners. Inside, the human scout remained still. He had wrapped his injuries, checked his gear, and was reviewing a map of the nearby terrain. His name was Lieutenant Jacob Voss, and he knew the Draveri would come for him. He wanted them to. He activated a small wrist device, an encrypted pulse that pinged an Earth satellite hidden far beyond the nearest sun. The signal was silent, invisible to alien eyes. It didn't ask for rescue. It didn't beg for help. It simply said, "Status, alive. Mission, continue observation." Then the scout left the pod, disappearing into the jungle like a ghost. Back on the fire collar, Relan finally got the report he had feared. "Commander, we tracked the pod. It landed on Saros III." Relan's eyes narrowed. "That moon is full of cave systems and thick forests. If the human is trained, he'll vanish." Admiral Shekhar didn't care. When he heard about the pod, he laughed. "One human," he said. "We have a fleet. Send a squad. Burn that moon to ash if you must." Relan tried to object. "We should proceed carefully. If it's a scout, he might be watching more than we think. Recording us. Testing our responses." Shekhar waved him off. "He's one man against the Dominion. Let him run. Let him hide. He'll die tired." Within hours, 3 dropships left the fleet and entered the moon's atmosphere. Each carried 10 Draveri soldiers. Trained, armed, confident. They expected an easy mission. What they found was silence. No tracks. No heat signatures. No movement. But something washed them. In the dense forest, Jacob Voss moved like a shadow. He didn't attack. Not yet. He simply watched. Measured distances. Counted enemy weapons. Studied their communication patterns. He let them feel safe. And then, as night fell, he sent another pulse. Not to Earth, but to a small, unmarked satellite. It triggered a quiet command. "Begin Ghost Protocol." High above the system, an old satellite came to life. Hidden for years, it began transmitting a signal, masked as background radiation. But the message was clear. "Scout engaged. Observation complete. Awaiting next step. Earth had heard, and they would answer. Not with noise, not with fire, but with something far worse. Silence, followed by precision. The scouts smiled under the dark canopy. Let the aliens celebrate. They didn't know yet. The war hadn't started. The stars above Sector 94 burned bright as the Draveri fleet hovered in formation. Dozens of sleek, black warships floated in silence, their engines cooling after battle. The communication lines buzzed with excitement, and the mood across the fleet was triumphant. After months of scouting and careful planning, they had finally done it. The humans had fallen. A hidden human outpost, buried deep in a dead asteroid field, had been destroyed in a sudden, overwhelming strike. No distress signals had escaped. No human ships had responded. As far as the Draveri were concerned, they had achieved a perfect victory. Inside the command vessel Firecaller, Admiral Shekar stood tall on the bridge, watching the hologram of the destroyed outpost. Burning metal floated in space. The black flags of Earth had been reduced to glowing ash. His officers clapped their claws together in pride, and the crew cheered. This was no small achievement. For years, the Draveri Empire had viewed humanity as a growing threat. Aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. But now, they believed that threat had been silenced. One officer leaned over to another and whispered, "So much for their fearless reputation." The admiral ordered the recording of the destruction to be sent across the empire. Propaganda teams would use it as proof. The Draveri were stronger, faster, smarter. Humanity, once feared in council meetings, would now be mocked in celebrations. Victory ceremonies were already being planned. Fleet-wide transmissions shared jokes and songs. Some ships even began launching fireworks in open space. For the first time in a long time, the Draveri weren't just confident. They were proud. But not everyone shared the joy. Commander Relan, a seasoned officer and veteran of 3 wars, watched the wreckage with a hard expression. His eyes focused on a strange piece of debris floating slowly by the viewport. It looked like part of a human scout ship, not a research vessel, not a transport, but something smaller, more specialized. The metal was too advanced, too new. The markings didn't match the typical outpost structure. He turned to his assistant. "Bring up the full scan of the station we destroyed." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, the scans were incomplete. We attacked before the final readings finished." Relan frowned. That wasn't normal procedure. Why did we attack early? The admiral wanted to send a message. Quick victory, no delay. Relan didn't like that answer. He had fought humans before. They never gave up without a fight. But this time, it was too easy. No resistance, no counterattack, not even an escape attempt. That wasn't like humans. He leaned closer to the display and zoomed in on the structure's layout. A chill crawled down his back. There was no command center, no weapons room, no defense grid. It wasn't a military base. It was a recon post. Relan stood suddenly. That wasn't a main base. That was a listening station. We hit a scout outpost, not a war command. The assistant blinked. "But sir, then why was it so hidden?" Relan's voice was quiet now. "Because it was meant to be hidden. That's what humans do. They observe before they strike." He turned to the screen showing the wreckage. Somewhere out there, floating among the debris, was the answer. A ship had left the station just seconds before the strike. No one had noticed. No one had cared. But now Relan did. He checked the timeline. A single pod had launched. Very small, with low power. Just big enough for one person. "Find it," he ordered. "Track that pod." The assistant looked confused. "It's just one escape pod, probably destroyed." "Humans don't run," Relan said. "They return." Back on the main ship, Admiral Shekar laughed with his officers, drinking thick green liquid and praising the fleet. "Let Earth fear us now," he shouted. "Let them know the stars belong to the Draveri." But deep in space, beyond the sensors, the small escape pod floated silently toward a nearby moon. Its systems were quiet. Its signal was hidden. And inside, a human scout opened his eyes. He didn't panic. He didn't send an emergency beacon. He simply activated his tracking mask, checked his gear, and prepared for the surface landing. He knew they were celebrating. And that was their mistake. Because the war hadn't started yet. Not really. And by the time the Draveri realized who he was, it would already be too late. Panic spread through the Draveri fleet like wildfire. Red lights flashed across every ship. Sirens screamed. Officers shouted orders. But no one really knew what to do. For days, they had hunted a single human scout. Now they were surrounded by an entire fleet of human warships, ships that had somehow appeared without being detected. Admiral Shekar stood frozen on the command bridge of the Firecowler. His jaw was tight, his fists shaking. He stared at the large display showing the human fleet, dozens of red marks forming a perfect circle around them. They had walked into a trap, and never even saw it coming. Commander Rillen was the first to speak. "They've been here the whole time," he said, "cloaked, watching us, waiting for us to focus on the scout so we wouldn't see the bigger danger." Shekar growled, "Raise shields. Prepare weapons." Rillen turned to him sharply. "No, that's exactly what they want. If we raise weapons, they'll strike first, and we won't survive it." Shekar looked like he wanted to argue, but deep down, he knew Rillen was right. This wasn't a normal human fleet. These weren't warships sent for a battle. They were already in position for victory. Down on the jungle moon, Lieutenant Jacob Voss stood on a high ridge, looking up at the sky. Through a small scope, he could see the ships, Earth's finest, silent, still, waiting. His part of the mission was done. He had drawn attention. He had forced the Draveri to send their best troops down. He had weakened their leadership with fear, and now, the real force had arrived. Voss activated a small device on his wrist. It sent a signal directly to the human command ship above. "Target is blind and surrounded. No resistance expected." Then he smiled and disappeared back into the forest. In the Draveri fleet, the human ships still made no move. No message, no threats, just the silent signal. Phase 2 begins. It was a quiet kind of terror. No explosions, no loud attacks. Just pressure. The kind that made every soldier feel like they were being washed. The kind that made even the strongest captain wonder if the next second would be their last. Inside the fleet, tension boiled. Some officers demanded action. Others begged to flee. A few even believed the human scout had cursed them, calling him a ghost or demon. But Rillen kept his focus. He opened a secure channel to Earth's command ship. It was risky, maybe foolish, but they needed answers. They needed to know what humanity wanted. Surprisingly, the humans responded. A calm voice echoed through the bridge. "This is Commander Hale of the Earth Defense Network. Your fleet has violated restricted space and destroyed a recon station protected under the Interstellar Agreement. We were observing your military patterns. You failed the test." Shekar stepped forward. "We didn't know it was a test." The voice didn't change. "You didn't ask." Rillen took over. "What happens now?" A pause. Then, "That depends on your next move." Across the fleet, every Draveri captain received the same message. Stand down and live. Resist and vanish. Shekar paced the bridge like a cornered animal. "We can't surrender. That's weakness." Rillen shook his head. "No, Admiral. Surrender is survival. That scout made fools of us, and Earth was never afraid. They just let us think we had the upper hand." Shekar refused. He ordered his ship to charge weapons, one by one. The systems powered up. And then the human ships responded. In a single instant, all of the Firecowler's weapon systems went offline. Shields collapsed. Lights flickered. Bridge controls stopped working. Earth hadn't fired a single shot. They had simply shut it all down. Remote override. Silent, precise, terrifying. Shekar collapsed into his command chair, defeated. Raylan took the emergency comm unit and spoke clearly. "This is Commander Raylan of the Draveri fleet. We surrender. We request mercy." There was no cheering, no applause, only silence. And then, one final message came through. Mercy granted. Mission complete. Earth out. Slowly, the human fleet disappeared from the screens. They left the Draveri floating in the dark. Not destroyed, but humbled. Down on the moon, Jacob Voss received the signal on his wrist. Extraction ready. He made his way to the landing zone. As the dropship descended through the trees, he looked back at the jungle. The mission had worked. He didn't win with bullets or bombs. He won with patience, fear, and perfect timing. And as he boarded the ship, he knew one thing for sure. The Draveri would never underestimate humanity again. Because now they knew that sometimes the most dangerous soldier in the galaxy is the one who comes first. The mood in the Draveri fleet had changed. No more victory songs, no more confident speeches. The glowing banners that once celebrated the destruction of the human outpost had been turned off. Now, only low alerts blinked across the warship dashboards. What had once been a proud fleet of conquerors was now a group of nervous soldiers, whispering about the same thing. The human scout. Rumors spread like fire. Some said he could turn invisible. Others claimed he controlled the jungle itself. A few believed he was already on board the ships, watching, listening. The truth didn't matter anymore. Fear had taken root, and it was growing fast. Commander Raylan stood quietly in the observation chamber of the fire collar. He looked out at the massive fleet. 30 ships, hundreds of soldiers, thousands of weapons, and yet they were being outsmarted by a single man, a human. The doors behind him opened. Admiral Shekar entered, his face pale with anger. "Our soldiers are panicking," Shekar said. "They're seeing ghosts. We've lost control." Raylan turned slowly. "It's not ghosts, Admiral. It's discipline breaking down. Fear does that when you don't respect your enemy." Shekar scoffed. "He's just a man." Raylan replied coldly. "A man who has already taken down 3 full squads. A man who is sending us messages on our own systems. A man who has made your soldiers afraid of shadows." The Admiral didn't answer. He knew Raylan was right. Down on the jungle moon, the scout was still moving. Lieutenant Jacob Voss had changed position again, finding a cave system near the North Ridge. It gave him higher ground and a better view of the patrol routes. He wasn't running anymore. He was planning. Inside the cave, he used old human tech, a signal decoder, a field drone, and a portable screen. He had hacked into the Draveri's local communication net. Every movement they made, he watched. Every strategy they tried, he predicted. He was always one step ahead. Outside the cave, he set traps, silent ones, deadly ones, not to kill, but to warn. The Draveri were not used to being hunted. Their soldiers were trained for fast strikes and loud victories. But this was something different. This was psychological warfare, and Jacob Voss was a master of it. One patrol found their path blocked by a burning helmet, left hanging in the trees. Another discovered a recording device playing their own last mission logs, altered to sound like screams. A third returned to their dropship, only to find it gutted and filled with jumble vines, arranged into a human skull. None of it was random. Every move was designed to destroy morale. And it was working. Back on the fleet, Admiral Shekar made a decision. "We will burn the entire moon," he announced. "Every tree, every rock, gone. We turned that place into glass." Commander Raylan stepped forward. "And what if that's what he wants? What if he's already gone? What if we waste everything chasing a ghost?" Shekar growled. "Are you saying we do nothing?" Reland didn't answer. He simply turned back to the observation window. I'm saying, we underestimated humanity. Again. That night, a scout ship patrolling the edge of the system picked up something strange. A ping. Faint. Ancient. Buried deep in background noise. They traced it back to a small, hidden satellite. One that wasn't there before. The transmission was encrypted, human-made. The Draveri text managed to catch just 2 words before it vanished again. Stand by. The signal didn't belong to the scout. It was a message meant for someone else. Reland got the report and his heart froze. He was never alone, he whispered. Suddenly, it all made sense. The traps, the fear, the delays. The scout wasn't trying to win the fight. He was buying time. For what, Reland didn't know. But the answer came quicker than expected. At exactly 200 hours, every screen in the fleet went black. A few seconds later, a new image appeared. A satellite view of the Draveri fleet, with dozens of red dots surrounding it. Ships. Human ships. Stealth class. Undetected. Already in position. Then, the same cold message appeared again. Observation complete. Phase 2 begins. And just like that, the Draveri fleet realized the horrible truth. The scout hadn't failed. He had succeeded. The celebration, the manhunt, the jungle chaos. It was all part of something much bigger. Now, the real war was about to start. And this time, humanity wasn't sending a scout. They were sending a message. With fire. The jungle moon, Ceres 3, faded beneath the clouds as the dropship carrying Lieutenant Jacob Voss rose into the stars. The engines made no sound that could be traced. The design was sleek, invisible to most scanners. Voss sat in silence, his face calm but his eyes sharp. His mission was over, but the war had only begun. Inside the ship, a holographic screen appeared. It showed Earth's Central Command. A woman in a dark uniform with silver stripes nodded at him. Her voice was clear and cold. Lieutenant Voss. Status. He replied, Scout operation complete. Draveri fleet stood down. All objectives met. Any resistance? No. They thought they were winning until the last moment. The woman gave a slight smile. They always do. Then the screen faded. No more questions. No congratulations, just quiet understanding. That was the human way. Results, not noise. Above the moon, the Draveri fleet floated without power. Their systems were slowly rebooting, but the damage wasn't physical, it was psychological. The crews whispered in the dark. Many couldn't sleep. Some refused orders. A few even left their posts in silence. Admiral Shekar remained in his quarters, alone. He had once been proud, loud, and fierce. Now he stared at the stars in silence. The weight of his failure crushed his pride. Commander Rillan was now in control of the bridge. He didn't order new attacks. He didn't prepare for battle. Instead, he called an emergency communication with the High Council of the Draveri Empire. When the council's faces appeared, they expected a victory report. What they got was a warning. Reland spoke slowly. The human we chased was a scout. A single operator. He had no army. No backup. Just time and training. One counselor scoffed. And yet he defeated us. No, Reland corrected. We defeated ourselves. Because we underestimated him. He explained how the fleet had been washed. How their every move had been studied. How the humans had cloaked an entire battle fleet without being seen. And how, when the time came, they ended the fight without a single shot fired. The council was silent. Finally, the head speaker asked, "What should we do now?" Reland replied, "Don't think of humans the way we did before. They are not just warriors. They are hunters, builders, thinkers, and if one scout can do this, imagine what a full strike force could do." The counselor frowned. "Do you suggest surrender?" "No," Reland said firmly. I suggest respect and caution. Back on Earth, the footage from the mission was stored, but not broadcast. Humanity didn't need to boast. Their goal was never fame. It was peace through strength. Quiet strength. Inside a hidden command center, military leaders watched the scouts' helmet footage. The traps. The timing. The fear he created. One general nodded. He never fired unless he had to, she said. Efficient. Controlled. Exactly what we needed. Another officer asked, "Do we send a message to the Draveri Empire?" The general shook her head. "We already did." Word spread fast across the galaxy. A rumor at first. A whisper passed between traders and soldiers, smugglers and diplomats. They attacked a human recon station and lost everything to a single man. Some didn't believe it. Others did and were terrified. In distant systems, species who once mocked Earth grew silent. Alliances began to shift. Borders were respected more carefully. And behind every conversation about Earth came one question. If that was just a scout, what happens when the full force arrives? Jacob Voss returned to Earth quietly. No parade, no medals, just a simple debrief and another assignment. That was the life of a scout. Unseen, but unforgettable. He walked through a hallway lined with names, other scouts who had served before him. Some living, some gone, all legends in silence. He stopped in front of a black wall with silver text. It read, "The mission isn't to destroy. The mission is to remind the galaxy why it never should." He touched the wall gently, then turned and walked away. The stars were still dangerous. Threats still existed. But now, the galaxy remembered. Earth didn't shout. It waited. It watched. And when pushed, it sent the quietest man it had. And that was enough. The jungle moon of Ceros 3 was thick with green mist and towering trees. Strange sounds echoed through the air. Bird-like creatures, rustling leaves, distant growls. But for the Draveri soldiers, the scariest sound was silence. The first team had landed 2 days ago. They were 10 strong, fully armed, and confident. Their mission was simple: find the human escape pod, capture or kill the survivor, and return to the fleet. Easy. But then they went silent. No calls, no signals, no bodies. Just gone. Admiral Shekar sent a second team. This one came with more firepower and scanners. They found the empty pod, crushed and abandoned, hidden under jungle vines. The controls had been burned, the tracker removed. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Just one word scratched into the metal with something sharp. Watching. Commander Raylan read the message through a live feed and clenched his jaw. He's not hiding. He's hunting. On the surface, the second team moved in tight formation. They scanned the area, sent out drones, and kept their weapons ready. But still, something felt wrong. One soldier reported movement in the trees. Another heard footsteps behind him but saw nothing. The third found their water supply stolen in the night, without leaving a single print. Then, at sunset, a flare shot into the sky. Red. That meant distress. The signal came from squad leader Jarkin. Contact. Unknown enemy. Silent. Fast. The message cut out. By the time backup arrived, only smoke remained. No bodies. No gear. Just the squad's helmets, arranged in a perfect circle on the ground. Each helmet had a line scratched across the visor. A warning. Back on the fire collar, panic was starting to spread. Admiral Shekar demanded more troops, more ships. "I want that human's head on a spike." But Raylan shook his head. "We're doing exactly what he wants. We're giving him targets. This isn't a battle. This is a message." A third team was sent, this time with heavy drones and flame units. They torched the forest around the escape pod, hoping to flush the scout out. They found nothing. Until their drones started disappearing, one by one, dragged into the canopy by something unseen. "There's no way he's alone," one officer muttered. "No human can do this." Reland stared at the reports and shook his head. "You don't understand humans. It's not about numbers. It's about training. Patience. Fear. One scout is more dangerous than a squad, because he knows how to wait." Back in the jungle, Jacob Voss moved through the trees without a sound. He had no backup, no base, just a blade, a rifle, and years of training. He used the terrain like a weapon, mud to hide his scent, trees to climb above patrols, and shadows to move faster than sight. He didn't fight fair. He fought smart. At night, he left false trails. During the day, he used mirrors to blind enemy optics. One time, he let them get close, just to study their movement, their leader, their mistakes. Every shot he fired was a message. Every trap he set was a lesson. And every soldier he spared was meant to talk. He wanted fear to spread. And it did. By the end of the week, the jungle had taken 30 soldiers. The rest refused to go down. Some begged to be reassigned. Others broke discipline. Even the flame units had stopped torching the forest. They said it felt alive, like it was watching them. The Draveri fleet above the moon fell silent. No more broadcasts. No more celebrations. Just nervous reports and rising tension. And still, the scout had not been seen. Only his work. Admiral Shekhar stood on the bridge, staring down at the planet. "Why haven't we found him? We're the Dominion." Commander Reland turned to him. "Because we rejoiced too soon. We thought we won. We believed the war was over when it never even started." The Admiral slammed his fist. "He's just a scout." Reland's voice was quiet. "Exactly." That night, a new message appeared on the Firecolor's main screen. It wasn't sent through any known channel. It simply flashed on every console, every display, every wall. This was never a victory. It was a test. The words faded, and the fear returned. Because now, the Draveri weren't sure who was hunting whom. And somewhere below, in the jungle dark, the scout waited for the real war to begin. The stars turned slowly above a quiet galaxy, but nothing felt the same anymore. The story of the Draveri defeat on Ceros 3 had spread far, reaching every corner of known space. The name Earth now carried a weight it never had before. Not because of massive invasions, not because of fire and death, but because of one human scout. His name was never revealed. No images, no voice recordings, just descriptions passed in hushed voices across bars, war rooms, and diplomatic halls. A shadow in the jungle, a soldier with no backup, a ghost who brought down an entire fleet. The story was different in every version, but the ending was always the same. And then the fleet surrendered, because he was never alone. On Draveri Prime, statues once built to honor Admiral Shekhar were quietly removed. The Empire no longer spoke of the Ceros mission as a victory. In fact, they didn't speak of it at all. Shekhar himself resigned, his pride shattered. He lived in silence, far from the capital, haunted by the memory of a war he thought he had won. Commander Reland, now a high advisor, wrote a report that was shared only among the Empire's top leaders. It was titled, "The Scout Protocol: Understanding the Human Threat." In it, he explained everything: the ambushes, the mind games, the silence, and finally, the moment the human fleet revealed itself. The final sentence of his report was clear. "Do not fear the armies of Earth. Fear the first human they send ahead." Other species took the lesson seriously. The Darnek Union, once enemies of Earth, began diplomatic talks. The CERN Collective, known for their arrogance, started redesigning their own scout programs, trying to copy human tactics. And the trade routes that passed near Earth's systems, now the safest in the galaxy, pirates avoided them. Smugglers changed course, because everyone wondered, what if another scout is watching? Back on Earth, Jacob Voss walked through a forest not unlike Saros 3. It was quiet, peaceful. A gentle wind moved through the trees. He had returned weeks ago, but his mind still moved through the jungle, still counted steps, still scanned shadows. He sat on a log near a small stream. His wrist device blinked once. A message. Mission complete. Status: standby. New orders pending. He stared at the message, then turned the device off. For now, there was no mission. But that could change at any moment. And when it did, he would be ready. He always was. He remembered the faces of the Draveri soldiers. Confused, afraid, breaking under pressure. Not because he had attacked with power, but because he had shown them what fear really meant. To be hunted by something you can't see, something that never misses. It wasn't just a lesson for them. It was a message to everyone. Humanity didn't seek war, but they prepared for it, quietly, patiently, completely. And when the time came, they didn't arrive with a roar. They sent a scout. Just one. Enough to learn everything. Enough to break an empire's pride. Enough to remind the galaxy that Earth was not weak. Because while others built fleets for show, Earth trained ghosts. And the galaxy would never forget. On the outer edge of a different system, a small alien warlord watched a blurry recording, footage from a helmet camera lost on Saros 3. He saw the jungle. He saw the helmets laid in a circle. He read the words scratched into the ground. Wrong again, lizards. He paused the footage and turned to his advisors. Are we ready to face them? The room fell silent. And in that silence, the legend of one human scout continued to grow. Because sometimes, the greatest threat isn't an army. Sometimes, it's the quiet man in the trees. And that was the truth now written across the stars. Humanity doesn't start wars. They finish them before they even begin.